Today we're working on the Induction Rice Cooker, the IRC-4, manufactured by the Hatco Corporation. The first thing we want to do is make sure that the unit is unplugged from the power circuit. This is the only way to ensure that there is no power being supplied to the unit, and it will be safe to work on. If there are any pans in the unit, remove the pans, set those aside, and remove the pan bezel as well. And then from there, we're looking at these top screws on both the left and the right side. Once both screws are removed, you can open the top lid of this unit. It will lock on this hinge on the side to prevent it from falling. And you can leave it hang there while you access the internal components of the unit. Just a different angle of showing how this lid opens and the hinge that's holding it. It's only on this right side here. It's going to lock. And then as you come back, it's going to lock there. Push it back again, and that will allow the entire top assembly to come back. Starting on the incoming power, this is our power cord wires being fed through the unit. Your ground is going to be mounted to the frame of the unit, while your two legs of power are making their way onto this EMI filter. And what this filter is going to do is it's going to reduce the noise coming in on the incoming power side, filter it through the box, and then as the power is coming out of these two wires, they are going to be a cleaner voltage reading with less noise. It helps the induction operate a lot better. That power is then feeding out of each one. These are both the leg of 120, separate legs, 208 across, and they're going to go to your terminal block. The terminal block is going to have the incoming power coming in, 2 hots, 120, the other 2 legs of hot, 120 as well. Measuring across any black to red should give you your full voltage, 208 or 240, depending on what's on site. Incoming power wires, the EMI filter, and our wires to our terminal block there. This has the potential, if nothing is functioning in the unit, to be where our area of issue lies. So kind of verifying power, coming in from your power cord, make sure that's there, seeing the same 208 on the outgoing side, and then just ensuring that that is also feeding out of the terminal block there. One thing to note about the EMI filter, there is a certain pounds per square inch when tightening these bolts for the wires. So if this was to be replaced, we do want to make sure that we are not over tightening them, and so we don't snap them. Usually you're looking for somewhere between 31 to 35 inch-pounds of torque on those wire connectors. From the terminal block, each one of these sets of wires, these black and red wires here, are feeding over to one of the main control boards that will be controlling power to your main burners. So this set 1 and 2, top board is controlling this one right here. This board is going to control over here. The board is mounted directly underneath the top board, and I'll show you how to get access to that. To gain access to the main board underneath, you'll have to remove the top board. You don't need to completely remove these screws. We're just going to loosen them. They're in the 4 corners of each position here. And once you got all 4 of those loose, you may have to disconnect some wires, specifically this one here. That is our fan control wire. Once those 4 screws are loose, you should be able to take the panel out and gain access to the bottom board, and also both cooling fans for this side. Once you've done what you need to do in there, just make sure to tighten it back up. Make sure your cooling fan wire is reconnected. And then go through and tighten each one of these screws again. So each one of these 4 LED controllers, as you can kind of see as we turn around and look into the back side, each one of them are connected in series with the other, and that's all in order to allow communication. The only one that has an extra wire is going to be our first one over here, as it has the wire that leads over to your USB port. This USB port would be for updating the software, getting tests of how the software was ran. Each controller also respectively has the wire that leads over to the main board. You can see this one up here. So this is our incoming communication there with the display. One other thing to note here as well is the cooling fans. There is a filter for them that needs to be cleaned occasionally. Taking off these thumb screws will give you access to the filter. There's one for both the left and right side. Once we get the thumb screws out, this filter will be able to come out. If it looks dirty, there's grease on it, it may need to get cleaned up. And then again, you can see that this is where the fan is drawing in. So we want to ensure that that is keeping the units cool, and those control board cool specifically. What I'm going to do now is reapply power to the unit, so you get a general idea on the startup, kind of what to expect to see on the displays as it boots up. It will show you the software version that it's running. And once that goes on, you may hear the fans kick in for a brief second. That is normal. It's basically running tests internally. There are a few indicator lights that will be shown on the control board, specifically over here, those 3. As far as the back of the control panel, it will also be lit up with a few indicator lights on those LEDs there. A good way to test this is while the unit's operating, the fan will engage on the bottom there. And if you take something simple like a piece of paper or a towel, you should see it get drawn up into the fan filter as the air is drawing air in here and exhausting out the back. So we want to make sure that those vents are clear as well. When removing the elements, there are just the 4 screws in the corners. I suggest starting with the bottom ones. There is a little plastic washer with each screw. And behind the element, there's another plastic washer as well. So that's going to sit on top of this threaded piece. Make sure to keep track of those while removing the element. The element will not come down completely, as we still have these thermistor wires attached to the unit. So as we get this last one out, You can see that the thermistors are still attached to the mica plate front up here. You want to make sure that these connections are well, and then you can get a better look at our heating elements. Make sure there's no damage on any of the coils, anything that would stand out as possible failure, especially if you're not getting any heat on either one or both elements there. And then once you have that placed back, you can return the screws. You don't want to tighten them up too much right away, as you still need to get these bottom washers to cover both sides. Make sure your holes are lined up for the screws in order to have that element placed in a good spot again. So we mentioned the thermistor wires. There are these two in the corner, this one and that one. They will sit in the, you might be able to see it here, the 1 and 2 spots on the thermistor. 3 and 4 over here are not used. Only 1 and 2. On your multimeter, you'll want to go to the ohms position. So removing a thermistor wire from the control board. There are these 2 tiny pins here. And try to get our leads on there. You might need the leads that kind of poke. But once we get a connection across the two, it should give us an ohm value that can be referenced on a PT chart. 112 would indicate a little bit warmer than room temperature, probably closer to 80, 85 degrees is what that probe is reading. You should get similar values for both resistors. So this is the number 2 one. Same idea. Get access to both. And they should read very similar values. Sure they get plugged back in on the right positions on the control board. This one was ran recently, so we would expect the resistance of these probes to be a little bit higher. As heat increases on a positive temperature coefficient, it should give us a higher resistance. So yeah, it ran the whole program. It is cooling off, but still on the higher side. Those resistors still are a little warm, so even the elements are having a little heat and cooling off at this moment yet. Checking the probe right next to it. Same idea. And that should be pretty steady. As temperature drops, the resistance will lower. Again, making sure that they both end up in the appropriate spots. Make sure your wires are away so they don't get pinched. Once the unit's back together, you can test it by turning the pan bezels and pans to the unit. Adding a little water. Make sure there's something to handle the thermal load here. And then we'll start them up. It's pretty much a one-button system. As soon as you push the button, the program is going to start. It will begin heating on this pan and this pan only. So we're going to start this one up. We're going to start boiling it. The boil is going to take about 10 minutes at least to start, and you'll notice it pretty quickly in the pan as it starts going. So this is just kind of us starting it up at the moment. Notice there's not a lot of boiling or rolling of the water. One thing to mention, I guess, as we go through them, there may be a file on the brown rice button. And to disengage, like I said, to press and hold the button to disengage. This last one is the other. If there's no recipe put onto the file, it will give you this error code telling you there's no recipe on the file. You're able to press and hold it. Again, that will disengage the display control and turn off that specific well. And we're already starting to get a nice boil pattern where the elements are. As you can see, after a few minutes, we're already boiling really good underneath there. The false bottom has been added to help with preventing burning of the rice at the bottom of the pan, allowing for that water to still circulate and cook the product. The idea here is that it's eventually going to leave the boil function and switch over to a simmer. Now you see that it just went into that countdown, which means we're done boiling the product. And we went from a fairly noticeable, rolling boil down to more of a simmer. And this will, slowly bring it down the water temperature as we're going here. As we continue this recipe and the countdown continues down, we've gone from a high simmer down to more of a low simmer. Meanwhile, our other one that's still on boil, as the program finishes up here, it will go into a done message and start beeping. This beeping will continue until somebody pushes the button, and the unit will be ready to remove the product. And put in another tray, and you're ready to start cooking your next batch. Inserting a USB flash drive into the USB port. We'll download the files from the most recently ran programs. So this should have a file noting both the program that was ran on our first well here as well as our second. Once it is done, you can remove the USB port and return the cover to ensure that no dirt or debris finds its way into that USB port. Once that file's been added to the thing, you can go to your blank USB. It will show you a dialog logs, or there will be a file in there depending on how the product goes, and it will give you this data here. And this data is going to basically show a couple different versions of what's going on here. There is a guide on what each one of these means, but it's basically to help us figure out how the unit's functioning, making sure things like these T1, T2 files, your thermistors, we do want to see them increasing like they are here to show that we're making our temperature. It's also keeping an eye on our PCB temp, our heat sink temperature. So again, if we're running into any issues with how the fan is operating, if or it's getting too hot in the unit, we can see this, taking place here. The other thing to note too is our set power. As it's heating up, it will basically be sending a lot of power out to the unit. One other thing to note is just the versions up here. Each board version is noted. Those should match. One more thing of note is our spec tag. This is going to show you the appropriate voltage applied to the unit, what your amp load should be, information you may need here, as well as our model, serial number, and item number. There is also a QR code with the serial number also underneath near the power cord that can be used to help get manual, parts list, other additional information to assist with the unit.